Welcome to the Secret Art of Business. And today I am very excited to have Mark Henson here today. Mark, it's so great to see you.
I am also excited.
Good. Good. Mark and I go way back. Actually, we just as a fun backstory, you were over at the house one time when there was a tornado, and you were one of the very few people that have seen my completely messy basement. But you know what? We were safe.
I think about it every spring when tornadoes roll around.
Oh,
It's one of my fondest memories of Columbus was hunkering down in your basement.
So because of that history, like I said, that makes me even more excited to have you because it's always great when your friends are doing really well. And what's been great to see is that you really seem to have, kind of circled back to an area that you are just so good in and passionate about. So let's talk about what you're doing right now.
I am a professional voice actor. So I do voiceovers for a living. And when I tell people that, they're like what? What do you voice over? Commercials, anything you hear on TV, on the radio, they always have a voice with them, and that's sometimes my voice. I do corporate videos for e-learning and training purposes. I do audiobooks. I've done children's audiobooks and adult audiobooks. And just a wide variety of explainer videos about technology or about some new product or anything that needs explained. I can do it. I can explain it.
And you can kind of tell right now that just from hearing your voice that you are very good at it, and it's really kind of taken off since you really decided this is the path I'm going to go.
Yeah, I came full circle. I actually started in radio. It was my first love. My first career was radio broadcasting way back when. I went to college for that. I got out. I worked at radio stations in a couple of different cities. And so when, the time came to pick a new line of work after the pandemic, I just had to revisit, the things that I really had always loved in my life. And I didn't ever want to go back to radio, but I loved doing voice work. I loved doing the commercials and the voice acting and everything involved in it. Like I actually loved to do audio production. So, when I had the chance and I had that clean slate, I just decided to go for it and see if I could get back into it. And I did. And here I am 2.5 years later now after I finally launched into it. And it's still going strong, still learning, still growing. I'm still at the beginning of this,
which is crazy,
next phase, which is great. I love being at the beginning of things, so that plays to my advantage too.
That is very true. Now, you said that you sort of had an interest in this very young. So how was it that you made it decide you to kind of take that as a career path at the very beginning, like getting into radio? Was it specifically radio, or was it voiceover work, or?
No, it was radio, because in 7th grade, some local DJs from the local radio station in my hometown came and DJ'd a dance for all the junior high kids. And I thought they were the coolest people in the world, and I wanted to be one of them. So that's really where the love started. I was like, they get to play music. They get to play it really loud. Everybody thinks they're so cool. And so it was a pure ego move at first. But I really fell in love with it, and I loved the craft of it. I did not like the business of it because it was really very cutthroat, very competitive. It attracted an awful lot of unsavory type of people.
Right.
And after a while, that got old, and I didn't enjoy being in radio after a while. Plus, I got tired of being fired. I got fired 3 times in 7 years. That was a little much.
Now, are those all local stations?
So I worked in Oklahoma City first, and then Lansing, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
And then in Columbus for several months before they changed the format and fired everybody. But I got fired in each one of those cities. So
yeah. And it's good to mention that too, because I think some people think, because you get fired, it's a bad thing. But for you, it was just on to the next, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, some of it was my fault for sure. Looking back, back then I would have said, they don't know what they're doing. They're crazy. They're stupid. But now looking back, I'm like, wow, I contributed to that. I had some personality clashes, some things I could have done differently for sure. But, every time it landed me in a better place. So I couldn't really complain.
Yeah, I switched jobs a lot was let go from a few. Mostly, I think I probably left before they fired me. But to your point, looking back at it, I was like, I was probably just not the best employee. But that's, I think, how I ended up owning my own business. So I didn't. If I had to complain, it was just to myself, I guess, to a certain degree. And you had a little stint of that too. I mean, you're obviously, self-employed now, but you had a business with employees and things like that.
Yeah.
How did you kind of fall into that? And specifically, I'm talking about Sparkspace.
Yeah. So Sparkspace was a unique kind of creative business team building company where we had a beautiful space in the Arena District in Columbus. And we hosted offsite business meetings and team events for 21 years. And I got into that because my previous job to that, so between radio and that, I worked for a design firm where we developed packaging and brand communications and new products for all kinds of companies. And I loved working there. It was a great place called Fitch. And through that process, I fell in love with the brainstorming and creative process. And I would just do whatever I could to facilitate brainstorming. I kind of became the brainstorming guy at the company because I just loved it so much and I tried to learn everything about it. And I would recreate these spaces. I would take our conference rooms and turn them upside down and empty all the furniture and bring in all the fun stuff and do these real creative sessions. And that got such great response. I eventually just wanted to build one that anyone could use, not just our company. So that's what I did. And then over the years, we expanded and we moved from one place to another and ended up with 10,000 square feet and 5 different rooms that people could rent and come and use for a variety of purposes, and loved it. It was a great business, but COVID killed it. Honestly,
Exactly. COVID killed a lot of businesses.
Killed a lot of hospitality for sure.
Yeah,
It got hit really hard.
It was also, for the time, very cutting edge. And then people just started just adapting that differently, and there was co-working spaces came up and things like that. So it was just like in a really rich time that you had that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, literally, kind of ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
That's no credit to me or anything. I'm not
I
like
don't
a
know about
pioneer, but it just was. It was just something I wanted to build because it's what I wanted to go to work in every day.
Right, right.
And for entrepreneurs, over the years, being an entrepreneur and having a fair amount of visibility, and at least locally, I would get a lot of questions about that, like how do I start my own thing or what do I do? And I mean, I've always told people, just what is it that you want to go do? What do you want to build and create for yourself?
Right.
And maybe some other people might want to be involved in too. And that's to me the best way, because it keeps your fire alive through those times where you're like, this kind of sucks, This is harder than I thought, or I don't have enough business, or how am I going to pay my bills? Like, it keeps you going because you love doing it, and it's what you wanted to build.
Right. I love that. So let's dial it back even further, and we're going to talk about when you were a child, Mark. What was it that you really loved doing when you were a kid?
I played outdoors. I was one of those guys, and part of it was because my mom shoved us outdoors, and her favorite line was "Go outside and play." Mm-hmm. But you know what? Like, that's still my favorite thing to do now, is to go outside and play. So, in fact, that's where I run into your husband all the time. He's always outside playing. I'm always outside playing, and I run into him every once in a while.
That's right.
Yeah, so I had a dog, and I had a tree house, and I had friends, and we lived on 10 acres in the country that had woods and fields, and it was kind of the perfect, idyllic place to go outside and play. Mm-hmm. And I attribute a lot of my creativity to growing up like that, for sure.
I can definitely see that, because just to touch upon Sparkspace a little bit, and you basically inventing this thing, it was really a place to play, where people could just kind of cut loose and have fun, put on crazy hats, and still have discussions. So it was really recapturing a lot of the fun that people should be having when they're trying to come up with ideas.
Yeah, I'm basically Peter Pan. I honestly, like, when that movie Pan came out?
Yeah.
With Robin Williams.
Pan, yeah.
I literally cried during that movie. And it wasn't really a tearjerker, but I cried because it was like just that idea of somebody rediscovering who they are,
Yeah.
and how beautiful that was, but also just that the fact that we forget how to play, and we forget how to get outside and play, and we forget how to just let go of the fear of looking stupid and wondering what everybody else is thinking. And
Right.
that was a lot of what the philosophy within Sparkspace is. When you're here, anything goes. When you're here, put on a silly hat. When you're here, throw foam balls at each other. When you're here, challenge authority. When you're here, come up with the crazy stuff and don't be afraid to say it. Like, that was what it was all about.
And why is that important?
That's where all the new stuff comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you just rehash the same stuff over and over and over and over. So, I mean, I'm all about new. I love new things. One of my core superpowers is exploring new things. But I don't know. I'm just wired that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not wired for comfort and stability and doing the same thing or going to the same place on vacation every year. Like, I love to just go out and explore and find whatever I haven't seen before.
Now, you brought up the buzzword superpower, which is perfect segue for me to ask you about the book that you wrote about this specific topic.
Somewhere along the way, actually, it was kind of after a bit of a crisis it was like kind of an early midlife crisis where I had gotten to a point where as much as I loved my business, I didn't really want to go to work every day. I'd gotten to this point where I'd built it and I'd created it, and that's all I ever really wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to manage it and maintain it and try to grow it. And
Stopped being fun.
It stopped being fun.
Yeah.
Even though everyone else loved it and it was a great place to go to work
Right.
every day, it wasn't feeding me anymore. And I let that go way too long, and I kind of lost myself. So I went through this process of rediscovery of, what am I good at? What do I love doing? What are the things that come naturally to me that I've just been letting atrophy? And through that process, I discovered that I love to explore new things. I love to simplify things to make it easier for myself and other people. And I love communicating. I love writing. I love speaking. And I wasn't really doing much of those things. I had done a ton of those to build the business, but then I'd let it all go and just maintain things. So when I rediscovered that, it really lit this fire in me again to try to build something new and do other things, and even using Sparkspace as a platform to do that. So it kind of got me through the next several years that way. And I figured if that helped me, it might help some other people. So I wrote a book about that process that I went through called Ordinary Superpowers, where you literally look inside and discover, what am I good at? What do I love doing? What contributes to other people? How do I bring that to life in a lot of different ways? It's not necessarily about, I have this really amazing power to create spreadsheets. Really, your power there might be like, I love organization. I love to organize things. I love to take vast amounts of things and make it something understandable. And that just happens to come out in creating great spreadsheets, right? And I could give you millions of examples from the different people that have gone through the workshops that I did, that just, realized they were sort of on the wrong path in life, because they had success. And that's, to me, one of the killers of passion, one of the killers of dreams, is when you have success on a path that you shouldn't necessarily be on in the first place.
Very true. Very true.
Because that's what we reward. We reward performance. And if you perform well, even if it's not what you're really wired or meant to do, you get rewarded, you get promoted, you get more money. And then all of a sudden, you're so far down this path, you feel like you can't get on a different path. You can't wander off in a different direction.
Yeah, and I think people get stuck with that too, because that's something that you should want. I mean, you should want to be successful and rewarded, and if it's not doing something that you love, that's okay, because you're successful. And you have to ask about, are you happy? Are you working in kind of your zone of passion and things like that?
The number of people I talked to that were 8, 9, 10 years from retirement, they were like, well, I just got eight years left. And you could tell they were totally unhappy. I'm like, how are you going to slog through those last 8 years?
Yeah.
And then I always envision those are the people that get there and then they die 2 years later, because it's like,
Right.
And that, well, I didn't want that to be me. Like, hey, I want to enjoy my time. We spend what 2,000 plus hours a year working.
Right.
And that's, you add that up. That's like 100,000 hours of your life you're going to spend just working. Why not do stuff you really love to do?
Absolutely.
Why? I mean, there are places and there are situations where you have to do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. But here in America, like
the land of opportunity.
For a lot of it, and the people watching, your podcast and listening to your podcast, we have opportunity.
We do.
I mean, we have whatever opportunities we really want to pursue. We're pretty free to do that.
Yeah.
And if we don't take advantage of that, that's sad and it's a crime, and especially if you're unhappy.
Cool. And in case people are going through that same sort of thought process, your book is still available on Amazon, I believe. So they can definitely look you up there or look it up and check that out because
Or reach out to me. I have 3,000 of them just on the other side of this wall in my basement.
Then they can contact you on LinkedIn and buy from you direct. So
I'm cutting deals on the book right now.
By the case. No. We could sell them. So what do you do now that is not related to voiceover or things like that? I'm going to guess you are still playing and doing all sorts of fun things, but
yes.
What do you do right now just really to kind of relax and unplug?
Well, 8 years ago, we bought a cabin in the woods on a little lake, and so I still go outside and play quite a bit.
Nice.
And I have a dog that we just absolutely adore, and we spend as much time with her as we can. And then I've had this amazing opportunity to drive across the country multiple times for different reasons.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. In the last several years, and especially in the last couple of years, I've driven to Dallas, where a lot of my family lives, a couple of times. So I've taken that trip. I've driven to LA. I've driven to San Francisco a couple of times. Next Saturday, I'm driving to Portland to pick up my daughter.
Oh, wow.
I'm actually flying out there, and then we're driving her back from an internship. And so I've gotten to do this with my kids, and I've gotten to do some of it by myself with my brother. So road trips, weirdly enough, have become like this really fun, important part of my life. I even took, on one of these trips to Dallas, I went as far as I could, as much as I could, between Columbus and Dallas off the freeway, taking nothing but old highways and side roads. And I stayed away from the freeway as much as I could. And I just took my time, and it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I went through all these little towns, and some of them were booming and some of them were boarded up. And I ate at all these weird little diners, the most local places I could find. And that stuff just lights me up. Yeah. I just love that kind of exploration.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience because, back in a past life before I had my daughter, I would ride across the country via motorcycle, and it was a lot of the same sort of things. Yeah. There's always fun going to, and I encourage people to do this. Just go to a different place and it could be a small town or whatever, and just go into the diner and ask, what's your best thing? What do people always order? I mean, I don't care what it is, but I'll have that. And it's even a better place if they make pie every day, and then, stay for the pie.
Oh, I've eaten a lot of pie. Yeah, I've eaten a lot of pie. The same thing. I got some advice years ago about always order the special.
Yep.
Because the chef has put something into it and thought it was great enough to kind of like put it out there, and then and it's usually like the freshest ingredients too. They had to go out and get that stuff just for the special, and I've never been disappointed with that. Never.
Yeah. Like I said, I usually go with what's your most popular dish?
Yeah.
Because if it's a crowd pleaser, then I want to try it too, and just to have that experience. And it's like I said, sometimes it's not necessarily what you would have ordered. Had you like, I'll just have the Cobb salad or something. Well, diners aren't the best at the Cobb salad. Get what they're best at. Always get what they're best at.
I had that recently. I was driving back from Dallas just a few weeks ago, and I got on Route 66, a little bit of old Route 66, and found this place called the Rock House. Mm-hmm. And it was part of the woman who owns it, and the place itself had something to do with the inspiration for the Cars movie, the Disney Pixar Cars movie.
Oh, wow.
And so it was this old classic, old diner kind of thing. And, the owner was there. I'm like, what do I get? She's like, you got to get the sloppy burger or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it was pretty amazing. I'm looking at this. I'm going, this looks like something Guy Fieri would eat on diners, drive-ins, and dives, Sure enough, I look around. There's a big picture of him on the wall. He's been there.
He's been there, and he's had the sloppy sandwich.
And he's had this, whatever it was, the sloppy burger thing.
Awesome. So, well, that is all fantastic. And I think you have, if anything, gave people a lot to think about today as far as their direction and spending more time to play, just rediscovering, because you commit to a job coming out of college does not mean that you're going to have it forever. It's all stepping stones when you really think about it.
Yeah. And I've always told people that it's impossible to really connect the dots forward. You can move with intention. You can have goals. You can have ambitions and desires. But every time I look back, I'm like, this path is so weirdly crooked that I couldn't have planned it out.
Nope.
And I tried to plan out a lot of it, and it's like,
stop doing that.
So I like to go, okay, what do I want to do next? Where do I want to go next?
Mm-hmm.
And that's about as far in advance as I ever want to worry about.
Yeah.
And I'm way happier that way, and because it's just, I can achieve that, I can get there, I can try that and see if it's what I want to do without setting myself down some 20-year-long path.
Exactly.
That may or may not be right.
Exactly.
So one step at a time.
Yeah, and you're a great example, as you illustrated, of sometimes you just wait for the path to be revealed. You don't plan too far ahead because, like you said, it probably is not going to work out that way. But sometimes opportunity just appears, and you're like, oh, this is my next step.
Well, yeah. After I shut SparkSpace down, like I went for a long time just trying to figure out what was next, and I was. It felt a lot like I was forcing the square peg into the round hole kind of thing.
Right.
Because I just, nothing was really lining up that I felt like I fit into. And it took a while to then, for this new old thing that I'm doing.
Right.
To kind of represent itself and go, hey, what about this? You've always said you wanted to do this.
Yeah, this is...
Shut up or put up, right? Like...
This is way cooler than being a DJ, let me just tell you.
It is, and I can't get fired.
Yeah, there you go. It's perfect. I am so happy for you to have found the perfect job for yourself. Well, Mark Henson, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I'm just going to enjoy watching you just get all these great jobs and maybe work your way up into like a cartoon character voice of some kind, which I think is like the ultimate. Know. The ultimate play for all of us. So thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate your mentorship and your inspiration and your friendship for so long now. It's just great to have you in my life.
Thank you. Right back at you.